Hi, my name is Sage, and anyone who knows me knows how much I love skulls. And so this week I wanted to make an undead fox wearing a fox skull in a winter scene with human skulls all around it, because why not? So in order to do that, I'm going to need a base and some tinfoil. And so I fold the tinfoil hot dog style before then scrunching it up. And since my too much gene took over, I scrunched it up a little bit too much. So to make it thicker, I then roll it in some more tinfoil. I then get some more tinfoil and roll it up before then folding it in half, and this will be the spooky fox's tail. Next, I fold up more tinfoil hot dog style, then I start to fold it on both sides before scrunching it down, and this will be the fox's neck. Next, I hot glue the tail and the neck to the body, and it would be such a shame if they came off later, but we'll get there when we get there. Then I get even more tinfoil, fold it, scrunch it, and roll it before then pinching it to make it the fox's nose, as I am making the head, and then I glue it to the neck. Next, I make her front legs by cutting some wire and twisting it on itself. Once I like the length, I then make another. And now that I have her two front legs, it's now time to smooth everything out with a popsicle stick. And the reason why I flatten the tinfoil is so the clay will have an easier time laying flat later. And it would be crazy of me to then cover all this hard work later by just adding more tinfoil to the fox's body. And this is where things get crazy. But that's the fun thing about art, the twists and turns. So, since what I glued on comes apart, I continue to flatten everything out, and honestly, I should have done this first, but artist me and editing me are two very different people. I then go back and glue everything where it should be. Next, I cut some more wire to make her back legs. I do the same as the front ones, as I wrap the wire on itself, before then making another. So now that I have her two back legs and her two front legs, it's now time to glue everything onto her body. And once everything is nice and secured, I then move on to adding a lot more tinfoil to her body, and you may be asking, why? And the reason why is because I just wanted to add more bulk to the legs, but then the too much gene again got a grip on me, and I just kept adding more and more just to the entire thing until eventually she looks like this. And now that her structure is completely done, it's now clay time! And first things first, I add a layer of clay over the tinfoil. I then smooth out the body with my hands before I start to work on the face. Next, I poke in some eye sockets with my ball stylus before then bulking up her face to make the skull pop out. I then use the ball stylus to make the skull have more of a bony texture before then bulking up the skull yet again, and I continue doing both of these things until I start to work on the nose. Next, I use my pointy stylus to cut out the nose hole. I then do half the face off of camera because it took me a while to figure it out, but I did, so I'm going to show you how I did the other half. First, I make the eye hole bigger to make it feel more skeleton-like, and I use the ball stylus to accomplish this. I then bulk up the back of the skull and blend it in. I then go back and make her eye even wider because I'm indecisive about every decision I've ever made ever. Next, I carve out the cheekbone. At least I think it's the cheekbone, so I'm gonna call it the cheekbone. And more of the nose. Then I bulk up under the eye with even more clay. And now that I have the basics down, I can then go in and just jump around focusing on all of the details on her skull. But then I realized her snout isn't out nearly as far as it should be, so I pinch her nose and bring it forward. However, I then realized that I'm gonna have to add more clay to her nose and redo her teeth. So that's what I do. But since I still wasn't happy with how far I brought out her nose, I bring it out even more. Once I'm happy, I carve out a new nose with my pointy stylus, before then going in with my ball stylus and refining the details. Next, I carve out her front teeth. They're just little nibs. Then I give her longer fangs, because I think fangs are neat and they're just fun. I then take a small triangular piece of clay, make an indent on the top, and bam, it's a tooth, and then I repeat this process numerous times, until she finally looks like this. I then put her in the oven to bake. Then, while she's baking, I move on to making a tiny skull. And to do that, I ball up a small piece of tin foil before then covering it with clay and rolling it in my hands. I then poke my ball stylus into the sphere twice to make the eye sockets. Next, I make 3 little clay niblets for the teeth before then blending them into the skull. I use my stylus and make a triangle for the nose and to define the niblets. Next, I bulk up the nose on top so it has more dimension. With my pointy stylus, I then refine some details before then adding a clay mohawk to the skull. And you may be asking, why a mohawk? And I ask, why not? Sometimes you just have to make some punk skulls, and that's life, you know? And then I make another 2, and they go in the oven. And you know what else is punk? Rocks! So I make some out of clay. I wrap some clay over some tin foil and then make a rock shape. I then repeat this 2 more times, and I put them in the oven. And now the fox is done baking, and I've decided I'm gonna name her Nova. And so I start painting her black, and I do 2 coats before then moving on to her skull. And I decide to paint her skull white because I think that's fun and good contrast, and I also do 2 layers too. Next, I paint Nova's eyes and nose holes black, and I go over them with 2 layers as well. Then I put Nova down to dry so then I can paint my rocks gray. And I paint them 3 times. Then I move on to painting the punk skulls yellow, and I paint them yellow to distinguish them from Nova's, before then painting their sockets and noses black. I then go over the skulls with raw sienna first, before then mixing it with the yellow color, just to make them look more battered looking, and because I feel like punk rock skulls obviously have cool lore behind them, so they're just gonna look cool. And now it's time to paint the base white. Next, I hot glue the fake snow onto the base, and I make sure to cover the entirety of the top side, and once everything is nice and secured, I then hot glue the rocks and the punk skulls onto the snow. And here I would just like to say thank you so much for watching, and if you want to follow me on any other platform, I have my links in my bio. And now, it's time for the glamour shots.